I hate being a CNA, but does that mean I'm gonna hate being a nurse? What's up, you guys, and welcome back to my channel. For those of you who are already part of the family, for those of you who are new, welcome. My name is Kiara Selena, and this is my channel, Nursing with Ki, where I mainly make nursing related videos, just sharing tips and tricks that I've learned along my journey to help you guys have the smoothest nursing journey. But I also started incorporating a little bit of beauty and hair, so if you're into those things, please make sure you click that subscribe button and turn on your notification bell so you won't miss another video from me again. Also, if you are feeling this hairstyle, I know it's not as late as it was yesterday, but I did a video yesterday on how I get my really short hair to look like this. So if you want to know how I got this hairstyle, make sure you go check that video out. I will leave the link up here, and I'll also leave it down in the description bar. So I got a question from somebody who sent me a DM on Instagram, and she basically explained to me that, you know, she's been a CNA for a while and she really does not like being a CNA, but because she's already in the field, already comfortable and familiar with the field, she wants to go further, but she's a little bit skeptical about going further because she is just wondering whether or not she will hate being a nurse since she is a CNA, since she hates being a CNA, and I guess she was asking me this because I worked as a CNA and am now pending licensed nurse, and so I'm gonna answer your question. So I changed settings because there was just too much noise in there. But I think the very first question you need to ask yourself is, why do you hate being a CNA? What are the things about being a CNA that you dislike? And if you understand the scope of practice of a nurse and what nurses do, then you can kind of figure it out on your own by comparing. So that's what I'm gonna do just to show you guys. So when I first started working as a CNA, I was honestly super excited. I saw it as a stepping stone. I saw it as a way to get exposure, you know, to be exposed to nurses and doctors and pretty much the field, a way to get experience. And I was super excited in the beginning, but I ended up disliking being a CNA really quick. And I don't know if it's because I was a nursing student. I don't know if I just did the CNA course and I was not in nursing at all, maybe I would have thought a bit differently about it. But I think the fact that I was in nursing school was one of the reasons why I disliked being a CNA. And I'm really sorry if you guys can hear that. There's a storm outside. I don't know. So one of the reasons why I personally disliked being a CNA, why I ended up disliking being a CNA, was because I just didn't feel like it was fulfilling for me. In the beginning, it was just like, yeah, you know, I'm gonna use this as a stepping stone, and I'm gonna, you know, meet nurses, and I'm gonna get to work around, you know, nurses and doctors and stuff like that. But I didn't feel like I was doing as much as I could. And I think one of the things that affected or that made me feel that way was the fact that, like I said, I was a nursing student. So during the week when I was in clinical, you know, I would go and I would be, you know, practicing on my nursing skills, and I would be, you know, taking vitals, and I was doing catheters, and I was doing all these different things. And I loved doing that. I loved being on clinical. But then when I came to work as a CNA, it just wasn't enough for me just doing ADLs. It wasn't enough. I wanted to be more involved. And that is one of the things that I disliked, but it just may have been because I was a nursing student. Another thing that goes with that was that it was just too repetitive. It was just too repetitive for me. And it doesn't matter if you work in acute care, if you work in, it doesn't matter where you work, emergency, med surge, long-term care. As a CNA, your job is the same everywhere, and that is taking care of ADLs. And it was just too repetitive for me. It's like, I like coming into work and not really knowing what I'm walking into, you know? As a nurse, you might have a patient one day who has one condition, and the next day they have another condition. And yes, the CNA, as a CNA, those are also your patients, but your responsibility is still the same despite the person's condition. It's to take care of their ADL, to help them with eating, to help them with dressing, to help them with ambulating, to help them with, you know, taking them to the toilet and stuff like that. It wasn't enough for me. It was just the same thing every day. And honestly, like, this is not to bash CNAs, because CNAs are awesome. But for me personally, I was just tired of doing the same thing all the time. I was tired of changing people. I was tired of, you know, and as a nurse, you do those things, but that's not mainly what you do. You do it sometimes, but that's not mainly what you do. And like I said, I was just tired of doing the same things all the time. It was Another thing that I hated was working with some nurses. Now, I understand that it is the nurse's responsibility to delegate, and sometimes nurses will delegate to you. But sometimes nurses, they're just literally impossible. They just dump everything on CNAs. And I'm going to give you guys a little story. Might be a little bit nasty for some of you guys, but I'm going to say it anyway. We had a patient who was very, very constipated, and obviously the nurse came to give a suppository. She came, she gave the suppository, you know, she was breaking the stool up or whatever, and me and another CNA were kind of standing up there because we weren't really expecting for her to like clean it, because we knew who that nurse was. Like, to her, she thinks that like cleaning and stuff like that, like that's not for her. So she was standing there and she's like, yeah, I don't need you guys here. Like, you know, I could finish up and do whatever, so you guys go. This was my very last day. This is when I quit the hospital. And if you guys didn't see my video on why I quit the hospital, go check that out. I'll leave the link somewhere up here or down in the description. I left the room, and my shift was finishing at 3 o'clock. And around 2:50, something told me, go double check that room. The nurse literally left the person on his side in the position that she put him in so that she could put the suppository in. She left him on his side with the PK, a PK on the floor and a PK on the bed, completely full of stool. The bed rail was not lifted. The bed was all the way up. And she just left him there like that. And if I did not go to double check, that patient would have been like that till the next shift. And the next shift would have made a report on me because I was the CNA, and she did not say anything to me. So sometimes nurses can be very lazy, and that's one thing that I just couldn't deal with, because yes, the CNA is there to assist the nurses, but sometimes they feel like they literally do not have to do anything. Like, they literally feel like they do not have to do anything, and so they dump everything on the CNAs. And that was one thing that I really, really disliked, because they're above you. Like, no, I don't want to say they're above you, but I mean, like, kind of like the military, there's ranks, right? And if you're, I don't know, let's say you're in the Navy and you're an ordinary seaman and a master seaman tells you something, well, they're, you know, a higher rank than you, and you kind of just have to listen, because it is the nurse's job to delegate to a CNA. So that kind of drove me crazy. I just felt like nurses can be very, very lazy. And that's why some CNAs see it as being bossed around as opposed to being like, as opposed to delegation. Because if you're busy and you're telling me to do something, then cool. But sometimes the nurses are just sitting there at the nursing station, shopping online, eating donuts, drinking coffee. I know what it is, guys. Like, and that's one thing I could not stand. Another thing I could not stand was the physical burnout. Now, depending on where you work, you might not even experience burnout. I mean, at the residence that I work at now, the CNAs are chilling because everybody walks. Everybody's able to walk, and there's maybe 2 people who can only pivot, but they're still able to pivot, and they're still able to kind of turn by themselves in bed. So if everybody's walking, then it's not that hard for you, right? To, you know, get them up, bring them to the bathroom, freshen them up, put their clothes on, like everything is easier, and sometimes they can even help you. But if you're working in a facility like the one that I was working at, patients are heavy. I mean, 200, 300, 400 pounds, and they are just like, they cannot help you. And it's not their fault. Like, I'm not bashing them, but honestly, as a CNA working in a facility like that, man, when you gotta turn patients, you gotta move them, you gotta help them. Yo, I'm telling you, 2-3 days, I couldn't work there 3 days in a row. My back was finished. My back was finished after 1 shift, and like, I just kept cutting my hours down because the physical burnout was so much, to the point where I was only working 1 weekend on 2, and I was still burnt out. Every single time I went in, I would work Saturday, Sunday, my back was finished. And for the entire week, I was using my massager in my bed because my back is finished. And people say, okay, well, maybe you're not doing the maneuvers properly. You're supposed to do it with your legs. When you've been doing it all day, you could come into work, you know, all pumped up and like, yeah, I'm gonna do this properly or whatever. But like, after 8 hours and you still have 4 hours left to go, because I sometimes did 12-hour shifts, sometimes I did 16 hours. I'm tired, okay? And so you automatically start to slouch. Your body automatically starts to do that. So the physical burnout was another thing that drove me crazy. I was always hurting. Another thing that I did not like was feeling excluded. I felt very, very excluded. I don't know if it's like that everywhere, but where I work, or here at least, CNAs do not have access to the charts. And one of the things that I love as a nurse is the chart, because there's so much information. I could see what the person's condition was, how old the person is, what they did before, like what their occupation was. And knowing things like that can make it kind of easier for you to, communicate with your patient. Because let's say if you know what kind of movies your patient likes, then you can kind of bring something, something up about that. If you know what they did for a living, you can ask them questions and start a conversation and kind of break the ice so things are less awkward. And I didn't have access to those things as a CNA. So sometimes I was going into this patient's room and it's like, my only job is to just clean you and I know nothing about you. Sometimes you can ask, but I just feel like it's easier if you know, so that you can kind of go in there and just like start right off the bat, as opposed to like asking. And sometimes they don't really, sometimes they can't answer. I just didn't feel like I was really included. It was just like, go in there, clean that patient, and I didn't even know anything about their condition. And lastly, this changed because I got another job, but in a lot of cases, CNAs are very, very underpaid. Like, they're extremely underpaid. And that's another thing. Like, you're physically burnt out, you're being bossed around, you're doing all the grunt work, and you don't even get the money you deserve for it. That's another like really, really big thing that I disliked. It changed, like I said, because I got another CNA job. If you guys haven't seen that, sorry, the train is passing. If you guys haven't seen that video, go check that out on my CNA salary. But before I got that job, peanuts, guys. So as you guys can see, I had several reasons why I disliked being a CNA, but I absolutely love being a nurse because I literally experienced the complete opposite of the things that I just mentioned. So in terms of the feeling unfulfilled, I don't feel that as a nurse, because I'm a lot more involved. I'm actually, doing treatments. I'm actually doing things to get the patient back to a better state or restore the patient's health. So I don't feel like, I'm just going in and, my one job is to kind of just clean a person and walking out. I feel a lot more in terms of the job being too repetitive. That's another thing I don't really feel like I experience, because even if you work in long-term care where people's conditions are the same, treatment plans change, medications change, people's conditions are constantly changing. It's like you could have someone who's been in the same condition for 5 years and then boom, their condition completely changes. So it's like, even if you're working in long-term care, you don't really know what you're walking into that day. And so that's another thing that I like, because I just hated the repetition, like waking up at the same time, going to work on the same floor, doing the same thing every day, and nothing ever changed. But as a nurse, it is not like that. Even if you're working in long-term care, like I said, feeling excluded, I definitely don't feel excluded. I have access to literally everything. I have access to the patient's charts. I really feel like more included, like I said before, in like, really getting the patient to feel better, getting the patient to be better. I'm the one who's giving the medications. I'm the one who's doing the treatments. I'm the one who's doing, most of the procedures and stuff like that. So no, I don't feel excluded at all. In terms of low salary, most nurses get paid pretty decent money. Some people get excellent money. It depends on where you work. But generally speaking, a nurse's salary will be higher, significantly higher than a CNA's salary. And I said in most cases, I'm not saying in all cases, before you guys come for me, in most cases. Will you hate being a nurse if you hate being a CNA? Absolutely not. Personally, I don't think so. If you hate being a CNA because you do not like bodily fluids, because you do not like seeing people's body parts, and just because you think the work is just nasty, well, then you're gonna hate nursing, because nurses deal with bodily fluids. That's another thing that people think, that if you're a nurse, you don't have to do dirty work, or you're not gonna see dirty things. Even though you're not, let's say, even if I'm not changing someone's brief, when it's time to do a suppository, yeah, that's stool that I have to deal with. When it's time to do a blood draw, that's blood that I have to deal with. When people are vomiting, that's still bodily fluid. So like, nursing is not any cleaner than CNAs. Like I said, we might not be, doing like the dirt. I don't want to call it the dirty work because it's not dirty work, but you guys know what I mean. Even though we're not like really in there, you know, taking people to the bathroom, changing people, we really are supposed to be doing it. Like it is your job as a nurse to do it, but you're just not doing it as much. You are still exposed to it. So if you really cannot stand bodily fluids or all of that nasty stuff, then you will also hate nursing, because nursing is just, that's just what nursing is. It's not a glamorous field. It's just not. But if you hate being a CNA because of the things that I mentioned, then no, you're gonna have a completely different experience as a nurse, in my opinion. So if you guys are CNAs, or if there's any nurses out there who's worked as a CNA before, leave your comments down below and let me know what you think. For now, that is the end of the video, guys. I'm exhausted. I'm going to take a nap. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video though. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and turn on your notification bell so you won't miss another video from me again. And I really hope to see you guys in my next video. Bye.